Okay, as soon as you're ready, it's time to put this into Photoshop and we'll put on some finishing touches. Let's just go look at the assignment briefly to see what it is we're trying to accomplish. We've got our diagrams made, but we'll be able to add in some of these rectangles or squares around the background. We can add in some kind of a shape for color. We'll add in the text, maybe even the numbering, 1, 2, 3 through 6. Some of this information I'm not going to require. Like, you don't have to put in this border around the perimeter. You can. You don't have to put in the text block here at the bottom with your name. And the reason I'm not requiring that is because when this goes onto your poster eventually, you won't need any of that information. You can put it in, but you don't have to. Okay. And actually, one more note on this. I guess this is kind of what it would look like, right? This is what you're going to submit to me. It says down here at the bottom that it would be a PDF 11 by 17. And the reason I say it'll look like this is because there is no title block on this one. Okay, let's go now back into SketchUp. And the first thing we want to do is, click on that scene that brings up every one of these, all 6 diagrams. For me, I got to zoom out just a little bit. And if you can't get it just right using the wheel on your mouse, go ahead and use that zoom tool, this zoom tool. This lets you click and drag, and you can just get the perfect amount of zoom. Maybe even you want to pan, pull that over. And I'm just trying to fill this screen area because that's what I'm going to be exporting. Okay, when I'm ready, we go File, Export, 2D Graphic. Make sure to go into your options. Actually, make sure that you select PNG. We figured out in the last video that means that we won't have any solid colored background. It'll just be an empty background. So PNG, and then I'm going to go to Options, and initially it's going to say something like Use View Size. Let's increase that. I'm going to try 3,000 pixels. 2,500 is what I had there before, and that's also good, but I'm going to try 3,000, just see what I get. Okay, we want to make sure that transparent background is selected, and then I can click OK and give it a name, whatever you want it to be. This is my mass model, so I'm going to call it accordingly. Wow, struggling to do that. Okay, mass model, and then export. And I should now have a document that I can open up in Photoshop. So get Photoshop open. And once you're here, we want to create a brand new file. The size, we're going to change to inches. Like the assignment said, this should be an 11 by 17. I guess you could just click right here, right? If you have that option, just click here. If you don't have that option, change from pixels to inches, and then add in whatever resolution you want. I think 200 is great, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. But again, if you don't have that option, make sure you type in 17 after you change to inches. Make sure you type in 11, and then plug in your pixels, and then create. Perfect. Okay, this is just a simple white background. It looks like it's the right size, and we're ready to bring in the PNG. So we'll go File and Place Embedded, and we'll go find our mass model PNG file, and there it is. Perfect. It's actually a perfect size, right? That 3,000 pixels looks like it was just about right. If yours is too small, then you should just be able to click this check mark, or better yet, I can resize it before I click on the check mark. Make it a little bigger, a little smaller. If I do select the check mark or hit enter so that that's done, I can always push V to bring up the selection tool, and then I've got these grips one more time. When you click on them, they kind of do that little jump. So grab them again and then start the rescaling process. So that can be done at any point here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and accept this. And whoops, let's add in our first shape. Now remember, this is an empty background. So if I turn off my actual background, you can see there is nothing behind this. So we're going to create our shapes and place them directly behind this. And that gives us that kind of cool effect, like, here's a box and this diagram is inside the box, but it looks like it's too big for the box, so it's kind of overlapping and breaking out on certain edges. I love that look. So here's how it's done. We find the shape tool over here on the left. we're going to use the rectangle tool, and you're going to have to make some adjustments probably, like the fill. If it's empty, it'll look like that, and we want it to be white. So we're going to choose white, okay, or black, or whatever it is you want. I'm going to go with a white filled square, okay, and then you'll want to give it a stroke, maybe or maybe not. Looks like mine now it doesn't have a stroke, but if I choose black, now I've just got a black stroke or a black outline around the shape. Okay, if you want some other color, then you can always go into the color selector and use the slider here to find a hue, and then pick what you want. I'll stick with black for right now. Okay, and then here's the size, which may start off like down at 1 pixel, which is not very big. You can increase that. You can select here and plug in a number, but you don't know what you're going to get yet, so just try something and you can change it after. Okay, here comes my shape, and I'm going to draw. Now it lets me move my cursor to make a rectangle, but if I hold down Shift, now it's going to be a square. Okay, and I'll do something like that. It immediately fills it in, so it's covering up the diagram. That's okay. I'm going to push V here again on my keyboard so that I can move it around. Place it like that, and let's study it. Yeah, I like the size. The stroke is good. We just need to put it behind the mass model, right? Behind the diagram. So I'll come over here to Layers and just click on the Layers tab if that's not open. Come over here to Layers, and we'll drag that down so now it's directly behind the mass model, and I can see the mass model once again. Perfect. Okay, if we click on this, the adjustments that you might still be interested in making. Do you want to change the color of the background? Do you want a different size? Let's click on that again. Do you want a different size stroke? Do you want a different color? Different line style? You can make it dashed. How about rounded edges? This is where I could do rounded corners. Corners, not edges, rounded corners. Or I can come up here and just eyeball it. So I'm just going to pull that back again, and voila, I like it. Okay, I'm going to pull that to the left just a little bit. I could always resize it, if I need to, if I feel like it's just kind of too close to the edges. And I can use my arrow keys on the keyboard to fine tune and position. Okay, I'll click done or click on the check mark, either way, after I like it. And you'll notice that right now, like, that diagram is contained inside the box. It's entirely inside the box. That's okay, because these get bigger as we go. And so some of them aren't going to fit. And that's that look that I'm talking about that I kind of like. Okay, I'll take this now. And there's a few ways that you can copy a shape in Photoshop. If you hold down the Alt button after you have V selected, so push V on your keyboard, and then hold down the Alt button. This means copy. I'm going to push and hold, and then I'm just dragging that over by clicking on it with my left click with my mouse. Okay, and then there it is. Now sometimes that doesn't work for whatever reason. It'll select too many things, and that little tool can be a hassle. One more time though, I pushed V to get the tool. I selected the object, and then I hold down Alt. And if your cursor doesn't change, it's not working. And mine isn't changing. There we go. Okay, now it's working. Holding down Alt, and you can see there's like a little copy next to the arrow of my cursor. Okay, and again, if that doesn't work, then what I want you to do instead is you can select one of these, and you can just do Control-C on your keyboard and Control-V, and that'll just throw it right inside here. You can line it up and move it over, and this one also shows up behind the mass model. You can rename any of these. I don't know that I need to, but if I did, I'd probably want, rectangle 1 and then 2 and then 3. But this isn't such a complicated drawing that I really care to rename these. Okay, so keep going with that, and I'm just going to do it a couple times. There's my Control-V again. It helps you out with the alignment. So it's showing me with those pink lines when I align with the first diagram. Okay, and then I'm going to Control Copy and V again. Or sorry, Control, here, let's just redo that. Let's select this one. Control-C, Control-V, Control-V. Not working. Control-C, Control-V. There it goes. Okay, perfect alignment. And then I'm going to do Control-V one more time. And perfect alignment. There it is. Awesome. And maybe this helps you decide, let's shift these. You can select one and then push Control. Should allow me to select two of them. If that's not happening, and it's not for me, then I can always come over here, find that layer. It's probably this one. No, it's this one. And then over here I can push Control, and now I've got these two layers selected. And then I'm using my arrow key to kind of shift them both at once. Okay, and you can do that with any number of layers. You just hold down Control and you can select more. Okay, zooming out, I like it. How about that color band? Oops. I'm trying to make sure this one is behind there, and I don't know what it's doing, but it wants to keep this one selected, but it is behind there. I think that one's going to be fine. Okay, how about that color band we saw in the assignment where there was like a stripe across here? And just like before, the order of all of these layers is going to matter. If this is up above, we get that kind of a look. If it's down below, we get that kind of a look. We want to put a shape that goes behind these boxes so that it doesn't run through them. And to do that, I'm just going to go right back to the shape tool. This time, I don't want this to be white. So I'm trying to change the color, not letting me. I'll do it down here. I wonder what's going on. Is my computer frozen? I think my computer's frozen. Let's try that again. Okay, I want a fill, and I just can't do it. I don't know why, but I can change it later, so whatever. We'll go with this. Okay, I'm going to draw a shape. And there it is. It came in up here on top. And now's where I want to maybe change that color. Go with a gray. Again, you can go over to your color picker and choose just the gray that you want, or maybe you want some kind of a vibrant color. That could look really cool. Red right here could be awesome. Let's see what it looks like. Well, it's in front, so I got to pull it all the way down. It's got to go behind every one of these rectangles, these initial rectangles. And this one, maybe I will rename. You can just double click here and call this one stripe. Okay, there it is. And either push V or go select your move tool so that you can select it again and decide, is that color too bright? Yeah, it kind of is. Maybe I want it. The problem is you reduce red, you get pink, and I'm not really looking for a pink. So let me go back to gray and see how I like that. Looks awesome. That's great. Okay, and then if I didn't want the outline to be there, then that's really easy just to say no stroke. Looks like that. If you wanted to change the size, that's easy to do. And you can grab the right grip to either make everything change together, or I'm not doing this right. Let's double click on this. So I'm trying to just not have this thing scale accordingly. See, I want it to just go to the left and to the right without getting taller. And I think it's kind of doing that. But anyways, it's there's something that I don't know how to do just right because it's not doing exactly what I want, but that's okay. I can always do a different shape and just start over. But that looks pretty good anyways. Okay, when I'm done with that, then maybe we're ready for some text. And at this point, I want to point out that maybe you don't have enough space in between your diagrams. Perhaps you're thinking, gosh, if I had more space, then I could really fit the text. And this can be a problem because moving it at this point is not very easy. If I were to go into my mass model layer, you can always turn these on and off to see if it's the right layer. If I go into that layer, highlight it, and then I use M for marquee tool and just select the objects that I want to move and try to move them, nothing's going to happen. Or if I want to delete them out and put them on a different layer, nothing's going to happen because this is a smart layer. So instead what I have to do is you can come over here and just double click, and that will open the PNG that we had originally as a new tab. And now I can use M for marquee, and then I can just pull that down. It's not working. Push Control as you do it. Let me do that one more time. So hover and then push Control on your keyboard, hold it down, and then just drag that down. And you can see now I've got more space. So I'm going to deselect that, and if I just go hit File, Save, then that will update it here. So the diagram moved down, but these other things did not, right? So let's select them. And I'm holding down Control, but remembering that's not really working for me, so I'm going to do it over here. In the Layers palette, scroll down, I'm going to choose the stripe, and then these will all move together, like so. Beautiful. Okay. So once we're there, we're ready to put in some text. That'll be the final step to all of this. Text, you can push T on your keyboard, or you can go to the text box, or the text command. And what you're going to do is start off by drawing a box. And the text will go inside that box. And it will just autofill, just automatically at, for me, 54 point, which is too big, of course, way too big. Let's reduce that down to like 13 or 12. And it always wants to fill this in with what it calls Latin, just fake text, just to let you see what you've got. Okay, you can adjust the color right here. You can adjust the size, the style. You can do some of those changes up here too if you want. And when you're done, you click the check and just see what it looks like without being highlighted. Okay, that's fine, that's perfect. Now I'm going to click here again, and be careful to click in the right spot. You click in the wrong spot with this tool and it wants to create new text. I'm going to hit Escape, and then I have to push V, and I'm just going to delete that. Okay, V for selection, select, and then delete on my keyboard. Let's go back to editing now. T for text, and then click inside here. And this is my first one. We're going to call this in caps. I'm going to use caps. We'll call this connection. And then I'm going to hit delete to get rid of more of this Latin. Going slow. There we go. Okay, now if you push enter at this point, you're going to escape. It's going to leave the text box. So instead, I'm going to hold down shift and then push enter. That takes me to the next line. And I don't want caps locks on anymore. And I'll say two shapes align to form a connection between private and public space. Now yours doesn't need to say this. You can say whatever you want here. And the reason I wanted to show it to you inside this box is you saw when it got to the end, to the edge of the box, then it just automatically went down to the next line on its own. Okay, and I want you to also realize that right now, while I'm in this edit mode, if I grab the edge of the box and pull it in or out, then I'm extending those text lines or shrinking them down. And that's important to know simply because if I click away from here, then click on it again. Here, let's actually, that's not going to work. If I click away from here and then I push V, and now I click on it, V on my keyboard, that brings up selection. This is going to do a different thing. This has a different effect if I try to extend the box. It's actually just going to enlarge and shrink everything. So keep in mind the difference. The V tool, selection tool, enlarge. If I go inside the text, which I can't do just by, I guess you can. If you click enough, you'll get inside there, and then the boxes turn black, and then you can change them this way. Okay, and I think that's most of what you need to know. You could do things like this. You could select connection here. You can go up to where it says regular and make that bold or italic. But you can actually change the text inside of this text box. In other words, just because this is bold, that doesn't mean this has to be bold. If this wants to be a bigger font size, then it can be separate from the font size down here. It just depends on what you highlight. Okay, let's select the box so that that's done. And your assignment is to put text on each one of these iterations. Okay, and if you run out of room, you can of course you can shift everything up. Like it looks like I got more space up here, and I need more space down here. So what I'll do is I'll select every single layer. This one is selected over here. I'm going to scroll down, which, by the way, if it's easier, just drag this up and then you can see more layers. But I'm going to come down to the bottom, hold down Shift, and then click again. And now every layer is selected. So now I'm just going to pull up. Looks like I didn't get my text, but that's easy. I'm just going to move that up. Okay, and then either go create another text box, or just Control-C when you have this selected, Control-C, Control-V, and change the text over here for this one, however you want to do that. And then last of all, come up here in one of the corners and put a number in. I should point out that when you first create a text box, everything is selected, or when you first add text. So this time I didn't do a box, right? Let me do that one more time. T for text, and I just click, no box. It still adds in the Latin here for me, but it's always selected so that if you just push any key that gives you text or a number, you replace all of what was in there previously. I wish I had shown that down here, but I forgot. So now I want to make this smaller. Let's go with like a 9. Maybe, yeah, 9 is good. Accept that. And then I would like to do the same thing in these other boxes. So V for select, Control C, Control V. And be careful moving around a text like this. If you try to do it from zooming too far out, you're just going to pull the box size. And that's not what I want to do. I actually want to pull this up here. Oh, and it's not letting me zoom while I do it. That's too bad. All right, fine. We'll pull the box size so that I can select. All right. Yeah, that's not going to work. Forget that. Just forget that and delete that. And we'll just come over here and we'll say T for text. Change the size has already been changed. That would have been a lot easier. I should have just done that. T or 2, and then go through and do that on the rest of them. And then in the very end, what you're left with is a finished looking product, but we have all these layers over here, and we need to decide if that's okay, because you don't want to submit it to me like that. Now, I'm not going to ask you to flatten it, because flattening takes away all the layers, and then you wouldn't be able to come back and make changes later. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to come and go File, Save As. Make sure that you're saving this as a Photoshop document, PSD. Don't confuse that with a Photoshop PDF. Photoshop PSD, I'm going to call this diagram, or I should have done massing diagram. Okay, PSD, I'll hit save, and now everything is perfectly preserved. If I should come back later and want to make changes, or if I need to put this on my poster, everything is perfectly preserved. But that's not what you submit to me. What you submit is this. We'll go File, Save As, and then this time I'm going to change it to that other Photoshop option, Photoshop PDF. Click Save, and go ahead and just, click OK on that. Now, if I deselect the Preserve Photoshop editing capabilities, that should make it so that all my layers are gone, and this whole thing is flattened, so I don't even have to bother with flattening. Okay, and now I'm going to do Save PDF. And I believe that I am all done here. Let's go see what we've got. Here's my, let's see, that's my Photoshop document. And here is my PDF. And you can see they're different in size, which is usually because the PDF is smaller and should be a flattened document. I mean, this is done. We're ready to turn this in. But if you're curious, like I am, what happens if I do actually flatten this thing? Let's just see. If I go flatten image, and then I'm going to save this as a PDF one more time and see if it's a smaller file. Sometimes that's just nice to work with smaller files. That's the only reason I care. So Photoshop PDF, it's already there. Let's go here, and I'm going to say 01, save. We'll get the same warning, and yeah, that's all fine. Okay, let's go look and see now. Oh wow, that made a huge difference. So, okay, moral of the story there is that flattening is what you should do. And you probably saw how I did it. I just clicked here, flattened it, no more layers, and it's just a more compact file now. But like I said, I can always go back to where my layers are at, and I can use the Photoshop document for that. Okay, go ahead and submit that when you're all done. And these are cool projects.